so wonderful to catch up with you and to talk to you about not only UNESCO, but this wonderful event celebrating the 90th of Count Basie in the cradle of jazz in Kansas City. So thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. I'm back to be on Neon Jazz. I love it.
I love it. Me too.
I love it.
And the first time that we ever met was in the early years of the program. We met at the Mutual Musicians Foundation, and I knew that I was absolutely dealing with a powerhouse, somebody that was a force of jazz good and in general. So it's been a pleasure to be all of these years to have this relationship. And now we're talking about all of the good work with UNESCO and Count Basie. So let's start the book before we get to Basie. UNESCO. How did this happen and how important is it?
We were actually, and anyone who knows what the Mutual Musicians Foundation was Local 627,
Yeah.
the colored musicians union in the United States at that time, segregated union. Still around 1823 Highland. It is ground zero for what is left of the heritage and the history of jazz in America. Everybody who is in the body in the world of jazz from 1917 until the present has come through those doors.
Yeah.
So we began to actually look at the neighborhood, we being Dr. Jacob Wagner and myself, had begun to look at the neighborhood to see if perhaps we had World Heritage Site available to us to try to jumpstart and make people understand how big Kansas City is in this whole creation of this thing called jazz. From ragtime in the state of Missouri to the present, we have everything. So we began to investigate that. And the next thing I knew, we ran across this thing called Creative Cities. I'm like, well, United Nations Educational Scientific, solely for the preservation of the intangible history of humanity. Food, music, film, media arts, architecture, design. And as we took a look at it, we began to realize that this is what we're supposed to do. Well, through a series of things, I'm a big team player person. As a series of things, we'd gone to the city. This was in 2014 to try to get them to do this because they had an office there. And for some unforeseen reason, they didn't. But you could only do the application every 2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So I came back again in late 2016, getting ready to be 2017, and tried another one. They had hired someone who was the head of something else. And I went to them and said, this is a wonderful idea for Kansas City.
Yeah.
It'll enhance tourism. It'll do this, it'll do that. And she agreed. Oh, yeah, that's a wonderful idea. We'll pursue that. So I thought, great, they're going to go after it. So that was like in January, February, March. Now, the thing was due in June now, mind you.
Yeah.
So somewhere around May, I called up. I said, look, I've got a lot of information. Since you guys are working on this, can I help to do? And she said, oh, we're not going to do that this year. Too much this, too much that. You need a committee for those things, right? And I thought, oh, crap. I said, but it won't come around again until 2019.
Yeah.
And well, that's just what we'll have to do. So at that time, that wonderful person, but you and I know very well, Scott Wagner, was a councilman at that time. And he encouraged me to go ahead. And between the research I had already done with Jacob and myself on the history of the neighborhood and the Jay McShann and Mary Lou Williams and all the history, in 22 days, I wrote a 29-page, by characters only, international application.
Yeah.
And submitted it.
Yeah.
That in itself is another story.
Sure.
And it took 6 months before we found out that we were the first and only creative city of music in the United States. And within 3 months after that, the president at that time uh, pulled us out of UNESCO. And for the last 7 years, we've been the only creative city of music in the United States under UNESCO. When I can tell you what an honor that has been to represent this nation worldwide, it has been overwhelming responsibility too, because you have to dumb down your own ego in situations like this. Because when you show up all over the world and people are all over you, oh, this is the US, this is the US, they know this. You could easily get the big head until you realize that the shoulders you stand on are relying on you to be sure that the information is correct, authentic, and from the standpoint of research and care and love for what you do. And it has been tricky, expensive, because the first gift, that first year, we had absolutely no funding, none, zero, zip. My husband, as a gift, my husband and my stepson, as a gift to our very first annual meeting in Poland, gifted me my uh, airline tickets for Christmas and hotel and everything so I can attend my first annual function in Poland.
Yeah.
And it has been like a dream.
Yeah.
It literally like a dream. I I I got to cross off things off my bucket list, going to Auschwitz,
Yeah.
seeing castles that were built in the 14th century, various things like that. And everybody knowing who Jay McShann
Yeah.
was from my town
Yeah.
in Kansas City. I
Uh-huh.
know, not only just knowing who Jay McShann was, but study the music.
Sure.
When we were in Copenhagen, we were invited to a nightclub where the entire evening was a retrospective on Jay McShann.
Wow.
I'm in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Okay. It was, I was wondering to myself then, does Kansas City actually really know how big we are? I didn't know we were this big.
Yeah.
I go to Copenhagen and find out that one of our imported people, Ben Webster, is buried in Copenhagen. But even more importantly, guess who he is buried near?
True.
Hans Christian Andersen. That would have never happened in the United
Yeah.
States.
No. No way.
Never happened. So here is one of the greatest storytellers of humanity buried and lauded in the same cemetery that steps away from one of the greatest saxophone players we've ever known. And had he stayed in Kansas City, he might not have ever been known.
True.
So these are the things that, in finding these things out and realizing that we were in even a bigger situation, not just trying to get Kansas City to understand how important it is, but to get the rest of the world to help me make Kansas City understand how important it is. And we have been successfully able to do that so far.
So, speaking of icons and wonderful musicians, Kansas City has this lore from Mary Lou Williams coming from Pittsburgh, PA here, Bird, all these names, Jay McShann, Count Basie. His lore in Kansas City is huge, and we are going to celebrate that, the 90th celebration of his life. On April 30th, International Jazz Day, Kansas City will take the reins of being in the spotlight. You're in charge of this. Talk to me about the show, the pre and post, how big this is,
Oh
and
my. When you get this type of opportunity, it's hard for you to say no because you're supposed to do all these wonderful things, right? But Count Basie's music is beyond iconic, okay? And so when we took this opportunity, it's because of International Day of Jazz. And we've been working with the Herbie Hancock Institute directly.
Yeah.
And there's going to be this big celebration in Abu Dhabi that they do every year. Okay, the UNESCO does every year.
Yeah.
But as Kansas City began to grow in the understanding, um, we have become the largest international jazz day celebration in the United States, particularly through this thing. There'll be 2,000 people joining us at the historic music hall. Now, that's what's the biggest thing. In 1938, Count Basie played to the first integrated audience at the new, it was like 4 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, new music hall. Since then, we have been able to have it renovated and everything. Beautiful edifice with, Art Deco. It is just fabulous. So we're going to bring for the 90th year celebration of the performances of the Count Basie Band, bringing the Count Basie Band to town, letting the rest of the world remember, see how fabulous this edifice is first. And then with that music in there second, then we're going to honor. We've done another step forward too. We've actually acquired the trademark International Jazz Hall of Fame. Yeah, that's
It's
again
awesome.
another
That's
story.
stellar.
Another story.
Yeah.
And this is will be the first time we will have honorees for the International Jazz Hall of Fame concert series that starts with Count Basie. But again, the name Count Basie invokes jazz at the highest of levels that was ever obtained for the big band era.
Yeah.
We're going to introduce, we've got students coming from all over the country that are going to be introduced to why this gives you goosebumps, you know?
Yeah.
We're the honorees. We've got Marilyn May, who, of course, is iconic to Kansas City.
Hmm.
We've got Bill Summers, who was percussionist on the biggest selling jazz album of all time, Headhunters, with Herbie Hancock. His percussionist sounds are, again, if we got to use that word, but it is appropriate, iconic.
Uh-huh.
Um, we're honoring the Cho brothers from 18th and Vine for the preservation of the area and bringing art at the highest of international levels down there. And a gentleman by the name of Dr. Larry Ridley, who started one of the first jazz conservatories in the United States and is the last living bass player to have played with Thelonious Monk. They're all coming.
Wow.
They're all coming. One in particular that stands close to my heart of the honorees for that evening is as we started doing the sustainable development goals, healthcare and clean water and various things will always be an aspect of humanity. And we try to adhere to those things. So we created something called the Mark G. Flaherty uh, Global Impact Award. Mark G. Flaherty was a lawyer. I say, well, he died in 2019, was a lawyer that took the HCAs to court and won $469 million for indigent care, which started the Health Forward Foundation. I was a recipient at that time. I have had open heart surgery, had no insurance, and was literally scheduled to die because this man went to court, obtained the money. I was able to get services that saved my life, that helped me to write UNESCO, that has literally put us in the position that we are. Healthcare is some of the most important aspects of humanity, and people are trying to decimate it for a number of reasons. Mark G. Flaherty stopped them, saved my life, and now my plans are to push that forward.
Yeah.
and make sure that healthcare is a part of humanity's rights and not privileges. So the Global Impact Award is part of the evening also, adhering to our sustainable development goals and not just the music,
Yeah.
but what moves the music. I move the music. The healthcare saved my life. And we can look at that cyclical motion now
Yep.
to let you know that everybody is involved in everybody's life.
Yep.
What you do to one, you will do to another. And we want to make sure that everything that we do from henceforth as a creative city of music involves everything that surrounds the music, including if you're going to live a decent life or not.
So let
Clean water, clean air.
For sure. Let's get to the brass tacks here. We've kind of well, we've obviously scratched the surface. If anybody wants to get tickets to the actual event and post, how do they do that?
Okay, we've got a website, kccreativecity.com. Probably be the first stop that you need to do. Go to our Facebook page, Creative City KC. Instagram, I'm always available. I make my number available because it's just fun to talk to people,
Yeah.
and I'll make sure you get all that. But kccreativecity.com is where you'll probably start. We've got tickets to the VIP reception that's honoring Marilyn May and Bill Summers. And we've got tickets. We've got student tickets,
Okay.
which are very important because if you call up Basie, if you go to Ticketmaster at Music Hall and look up Basie students, you can get tickets for $10 for students. So we're trying to make this available to everyone. International Day of Jazz is a huge day
Yeah.
worldwide. Thousands of cities are holding celebrations. We are the largest
Yeah.
in Kansas, in the United States. We're the largest in the United States.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about all of these opportunities and things that will come up beyond this. But Count Basie, I, you know, I can't wait
Yeah.
because the music is it just flows through you. If you've never heard big band music,
Yeah.
bring your kids, get them out there because it'll change them,
It's the
completely change how they listen to things.
It's the warmth that attracted us to this art form. He embodies that warmth, and that's what you want. You want that feeling all the time. It's the good high. It's the healthy high. It's the thing that will make you feel like you're connected on this planet. And Count did it. Kansas City's doing it. You're doing it. I can't magnify enough what you've done for the jazz community and what you're doing with UNESCO. And this event is just another part of your timeline that's stellar. So thank you for taking a minute out. We will shout all this from the mountaintops, get all the links in there, and we're going to get people, we're going to fill the seats and have a wonderful time celebrating jazz.
Well, it's so good to see you. It's
Always
so
good.
good to be on Neon Jazz again. It's always been a blast.
Yes.
Just getting out there. So anything you need from us, just let us know. April 30th, 2025, we're going to bring him back and let you hear why it's, as my granddaughter told me when she started listening to me, she said, "Look, Grandma, goosebumps." I said, "Yeah, it does that to you."
That's it. That's a perfect
Mhm.
way to end it all. Anita, it's always wonderful. Thank you so much. And Kansas City, here we come.
Yeah, we go. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye
Ciao.
bye.
Bye.